Oh, Andrew's here. Miss Shea, hold on, please.
Yes, ma'am.
Hey, Andrew, can you hear me?
Yes, so sorry I'm late. I got the times mixed up.
I was saying earlier, I said I would venture to guess it's probably a time change problem. And guess what? Here in the spaces, we're used to occupying our time with chit chat, so no worries. But if you could hold on just a second, Andrew, I want to let Mache have his turn to speak because he was waiting. Go ahead.
Please do.
I just want to say, well, I had a question and a statement.
Sure. Oh, you're cutting out, my friend. We cannot hear you.
If you're having trouble, Michelle, just drop down and jump right back up, man.
Yeah, we'll let you back up. And while you do that, I'm going to introduce Andrew. And I'm glad you made it, Andrew. And no worries about the mix up with the time change and all that stuff. Believe me, we are always pivoting here in the spaces. And Paul, thank you for your questions. Appreciate you.
Hey, thank you too, Sherry.
Um, I would like to give Andrew the proper introduction, if I may. Our guest this evening is Andrew Lichtenberger. I'm sorry, Lichtenberger from New York, and currently he resides in Las Vegas. Andrew is an author and wrote the book titled The Yoga of Poker. He won his first WSOP bracelet in 2016 for taking down event number 52, the 3K no limit buy-in for a little more than $500,000. Our guest has 2 circuit rings and with 92 WSOP caches, including 17 final table appearances. Andrew has 12 WPT caches with 1 title and 5 final table appearances and is a WPT instructor. Our guest has a Hendon Mob record reflecting over $20 million in total live earnings with a best live cash of 2.7 million for his third place finish in the WPT main event at the Wynn last year in 2023. Andrew is a member of the GG Poker Integrity Board, and our guest is also the CEO and co-founder of Octopi Poker. So again, welcome, Andrew. We're glad you're with us this evening.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Well, we're looking forward to it. Let's hit the ground running with some tough questions like
Let's do it.
how did you get the nickname Lucky Chewy?
It's a favorite question people love to ask. The answer may surprise you. So, in grade school, my mother packed me Chewy granola bars every day for lunch. And I guess, as all great nicknames are formed through repetition, my friends, one in particular, started calling me Chewy. And that pretty much stuck with me until I found poker in high school, and I made my first screen name Lucky Chewy because I figured, hey, being lucky is kind of important in cards, and thus the name was born. And somehow it's stuck around to this day. So,
I
yeah, I don't think
love
it's going anywhere at this point.
I love that so much. Thank you for sharing that. Another hard question: why or how did you become a dove owner?
So my wife was feeding the doves in our backyard, and one of them fell ill at one point, and she was quite sad and told a friend of hers, and the friend recommended, or rather, she knew about a bird sanctuary a couple hours out from Vegas in.
Oh, sorry, I hit the mute button by mistake, Andrew. Unmute yourself. I'm sorry.
Okay, no worries. Should I start over, or
Yeah,
did you hear part of it?
just that the dove was sick and your wife found out about a bird sanctuary. Is as far as we heard.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So, yeah, we found out that there was a dove. We don't know exactly what happened to the previous owner. Um, Probably they just got old and couldn't take care of a dove anymore. So they
Right.
dropped her off at the sanctuary. I'm allergic to cats. With the expectation to get this dove and give her a nice home, and then
You're
in
kind
my
of cutting out,
we
Andrew.
have. Oh, sorry, I'm almost
You're
home. I
kind of
was
cutting
actually
out.
driving back from LA today, so I'll be home in about
No,
3 minutes.
no worries.
But yeah,
Just
anyway,
know that.
we got
Go
those
ahead. Go
two
ahead. We
doves,
can hear
and
you.
they're very much okay. Cool. Yeah, they're very much a part of our family, and we adore them, and they give us
Oh,
lots of joy.
and what are their
Yeah, they're very
names?
sweet.
What are their names?
Uh, Dovey is the male, and Blanca is the female,
Oh,
and they're very much bonded, and they build nests together, and yeah, they're quite adorable.
so do you keep them in cages, or do they just are they allowed to just roam all the time?
Yeah, they're allowed to roam, and they can be a bit messy at times. They mostly keep to the same areas, and we put some newspaper down
Right.
for them, but it was untenable for us to keep them in cages. It just didn't feel right, and
I love
yeah, I
that.
don't know.
Absolutely love that.
Yeah,
Honestly, I don't think I've ever met a dove owner, and I was very curious about owning
ah,
a dove or two. So, thank you for sharing that. Um,
of course.
okay, I'm just shooting some different questions before we get too serious. Sometimes you wear
Okay.
headphones at the poker table. What are you listening to?
Um, yeah, so I don't listen to music that much. If I'm listening to music, I try to listen to something that's gonna bring me closer to a balanced state of mind. So, like, if I'm feeling exceptionally lethargic, I might listen to something more upbeat. If I'm feeling too energetic, I might try to bring my energy down. And then, in rare cases, if I just feel like I kind of need to focus a bit more, um, I might just listen to some binaural beats, kind of
Right.
thing. But yeah, I kind of, I have a wide ranging, um, I guess, acceptability for music. I listen to Celtic music. I'll listen to like modern hip hop, sometimes rock and roll, and sometimes like Indian, like Hindu mantras. Really, kind of anything in the right moment is going to be suitable
Well,
for
I
me.
think I find it interesting, and I think this is a great point for our listeners. Um, your selection is kind of based on your state of mind and where you want that state of mind to go, right?
Yeah,
And I
definitely.
think
Yeah.
that's a great point because sometimes we get upset and we just want that hard rock music on and we just feed into being upset instead of, you know, trying to
Mm.
calm ourselves down so we don't go on that little tilt run.
Right. Yeah,
I
for
think
sure.
that is something for all of us to cue on. Okay, so um, a few years ago, I was invited to attend a media presser for the launch of the GG Poker Integrity Board. And I have to say, I was pretty excited after going to that presser at the thought that the cheaters, would be caught and pay the price for cheating because, it's a lofty goal, of course, but I think it, is definitely necessary. We could all agree on that. Can you give us a quick overview of the goals uh, and or the job of the integrity board?
Yeah, so a bit of a spoiler alert. The council has at this point been disbanded.
Oh,
I did I did work with them for some period of time before Gigi made the decision to just, part ways with us. And I thought we did some good work. I can't really reveal kind of what happened, but we reviewed some cases. Uh, yeah, that's probably all that's really appropriate to say. But I do think they had good intentions with it, and I think we all kind of did our best to help make the games cleaner and safer.
well, and I was talking about this in a space the other day when folks were talking about you joining us tonight. And the premise is amazing, right? It's a lofty goal, but unfortunately, we have city, state, um, country, you know, laws that all vary across the globe. So it would be impossible for everybody to be on the same page. Although I saw that we could maybe make some progress on the topic, it's hard to see the overall solution when you're dealing worldwide.
Yeah, no, it is definitely challenging. There were certainly flaws with the process. It's never been done before, so I guess that's to be expected. And we did kind of modify things as we went along. Uh, but yeah, perhaps that's ultimately why GG decided to go a different route. Nevertheless, I was grateful to be a part of it and work with some really amazing people. And yeah, like I said, I do think that we ultimately did make some progress, maybe not as much as Gigi or others would have liked, but more than none.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate your efforts, and I know Jason Kuhn was part of that, and Fedor, and a couple of other folks. So, we certainly appreciate the effort and the try, and hopefully, even just the spotlight, shining on the subject is going to help in the long run, as well as people try to find those solutions to the online cheating and cheating in real life. And now we're faced with micro mini cameras, right? And
Right, that's crazy
it's
stuff.
insane. Like when I saw the Berkey's presentation on the subject, I was like, oh my gosh, like crazy, right? um,
Right. Yeah.
it's
No, I was really shocked. But it makes sense that, you know, there's a lot of money to be won in poker for cheaters. So for people that, you know, don't feel the need to, I guess, act ethically and do the right thing, so to speak, they're just going to go out and try to do it. So yeah, it's a good guys versus bad guys kind of situation. A tale as old as time in many ways.
absolutely. I'm going to move on to something, and I'm going to let I have a couple of co-hosts tonight with me. I want to introduce you to my co-host, and then the other folks that are on the panel as well. So, as I'm off is Isaac, Donna. Donna is over in the UK, and Kieran Chess are my co-hosts this evening. So, I want to introduce you to them, Andrew. Because we're going to ask you some questions. We're going to kind of target a subject area. um, since inviting you for this interview, some topics have kind of popped off here in the spaces, and we think that we can have some teachable moments. If you would be willing to go through some scenarios with us, maybe putting your
Sure.
former Poker Integrity Board member hat on for just a little
Sure.
while. So, first, I'm going to say to you, feel free at any time to say, let's move on. Okay. So, we don't want you to feel like
Okay.
we're trying to corner you into anything. Second thing I want to say to those of you that are on the panel, I would appreciate you making no comments, because we just want Andrew's unbiased opinion, and we don't want our opinions to influence his. So we're just trying to present some scenarios generically to see what his opinion would be on the scenarios. I hope that makes sense. Um,
Yeah, sounds fun.
Second, to our Spaces regulars, we have changed many things about the scenarios that we're about to present. We will not be mentioning names, operator names, or even tournament names on purpose. So each of us, the four members that I spoke about, have a scenario to present to you. Just give us your opinion, whether it's a punishable offense, if we should do it or not do it, and we would appreciate your comments. Okay, so
You
I'm going
got
to
it.
start and break the ice with one scenario, and here it is. I
Okay.
I'm playing an online tournament and I get tired. So on my way to
Hmm.
bed, I tell my husband that I'm leaving the tournament running and he can finish it or just ignore it. My husband finished the tournament and wins it. Is this okay?
So, as far as I know, in all online sites, it would be against the rules. Um, I can see how it would be an innocent thing, assuming uh, you and your husband are of like a comparable skill level. But yeah, I do think it would be kind of one of those things where it's like against the terms of service, so like against the
Right.
law, so to speak. But maybe it's a bit like jaywalking, where maybe it's not a fair comparison. Maybe it's a bit worse. I mean, the real problem, right, is that the people who are playing against you throughout the duration of the tournament are then gonna be uh sort of not privy to how your husband plays.
Right.
So I guess
Right.
that's kind of the crux of the matter.
Right.
So I suppose it would be the wrong thing to do. Um, Obviously, it would be basically impossible to police against it, and I think that was one of the things that I found to be a little bit annoying about certain aspects of terms of service, just in online poker generally. When you have a rule but you have no way to police against it, it seems like it's not great, because then people who follow the rule are at the whim of the people who like won't follow
Right.
it and will game the system.
Right.
Is that a good
No,
response? Is that
no,
helpful?
I just, I think it's great. I think it is, very forthcoming, and I think it really looked at all sides of it, that
Hmm.
it seems innocent, but yet maybe not so much. So I appreciate your input on that. So I'm going to go
Yeah.
ahead and let Isaac read his next because he's going to have to go shortly because he's going to be hosting a game. So Isaac, go ahead.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, sure. Let me just grab it real quick. And let me see. By the way, glad to meet you, Andrew. Okay, so here we go. Can y'all hear me well?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So the scenario is a beloved friend.
I can't hear anything, by the way. I
Oh,
don't know
wait a
if
minute.
he's speaking.
Uh-oh. Okay,
Okay.
let's see.
So you cannot hear Isaac, Andrew?
No, I can only hear
Okay,
you.
so
Interesting.
this is what I'm going to need you to do, Andrew. I need you to go out of the space and come back in because what happened is when you were traveling, then you went on to the Wi-Fi, and so it kind of screws
Okay.
up with the space sometimes. So,
Cool. I'll
okay,
be right back.
thanks.
And there we go.
Good thing we all are old hat at this, right? We know we know all.
Yeah, right? Like we got it down. We
We
got it
got
down.
it. We have all this stuff figured out somehow, some way. Um, all right, let me try to get him up here and we'll try it again. All right, Isaac, go ahead and speak and see if Andrew can hear you.
Andrew, can you hear me?
I can.
Perfect. Go ahead.
Awesome. Okay, so here's the scenario. All right, a beloved friend is visiting from another country, a country that does not allow the platform that the league uses. Due to time restraints, the friend couldn't get their account to work in the US, so the host allowed her to log into the account and play. Both players informed the other players what was happening, but not all players were informed. Therefore, some thought they were playing against the owner of the account. Is this okay?
Uh, I would say no. I mean, again, it's like kind of that main issue where if you think you're playing against an account, but you're not actually, or rather, you're playing against a person on the account and you're not playing against that person, it seems like that's what the rule seeks to prevent, right? So in that case, it would seem as if, the players who are not aware of what's going on are at an exceptional disadvantage relative to the ones that do know what's going on. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for those comments. All right, Kieran, go ahead. Kieran, meet Lucky Chewy, Andrew.
Hi, Andrew.
Hello.
All right, let me get my glasses on here. All right. A group of players have a weekly online league. An operator sets up the $50 buy in tournament. The password is given out shortly before it begins and is leaked. A professional player creates a fake account and plays under the fake account instead of their normal account. Tells 2 to 3 other league members, but not all league members. About 90% of the members did not know the troll account was indeed a professional player. Is this okay to do?
No. I mean, it just seems kind of rude. This one seems the kind of the most clear. Just doesn't seem reasonable, I guess.
And then, well, part two of that is, let's see. This player would also follow league members into online cash games under the fake account. Is this okay? Seems like
Uh, I mean, I guess if you were really to get into the letter of the law at that point, the questions to ask would most likely be, do they have an account on the site already? And this is the like a second account. Because if you just follow people into cash games, even so, it may have been wrong to arrive at the point where you've gained insight to how they play based on being in this tournament that you shouldn't have been in the first place. Like you can follow people around in online platforms, right? There's no rule preventing that. But if it's an account that is not sort of the one that they're supposed to be on, assuming it's a one account per site type situation, uh, then yeah, I guess like that's okay. But if it is like their only account, then even though it would have been quite uh, poor form to enter into the tournament initially, uh, I guess that part would be acceptable.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for those comments.
Yeah,
Donna, meet Andrew and tell us your scenario.
Hi, Andrew. Nice to speak to you.
likewise.
The league is down to their season-ending final 12 tournament. While in a public forum, aka an X space, one of the 12 players states that she will be out of town and really doesn't want to waste her time playing the 5K tournament if she wins it. She makes the following statement: "I'm sure I can get someone just to play on my account. Is this okay to have someone play on your account for you? Thank you."
No, I mean, I think it's kind of the same as some of the previous scenarios. Uh, it ultimately just disadvantages the other players, right? Because especially in a league format, you're going to have logged a certain amount of hands and sessions with an account or player that's presumably on that account. And then if you face off against that account and it's a different player, uh, you know, understandably, they're not privy to how you play, but more importantly, they understand that they're a new player and you don't understand that. So it's just always going to disadvantage the player that's acting in good faith and following the rules. And yeah, I mean that's why I would say I would have to imagine that the rule exists in the first place.
Thank you for your answer.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, perfect. Larry, did you have a question or comment from something we were discussing earlier?
Yeah, actually, sort of. It was more about the musical stuff than the mood. First, thank you, Sherry, for giving me a chance to come up and talk. And I want to thank Andrew for coming today and let him know I'm sort of a fan. Been following his career since he was first started, and appreciate everything he's done for the poker world. Thank you,
Oh,
sir.
thank you.
My question, no problem. My question is related to, and it's going to sound weird for some people, but are you a TM guy? And how does that meditation play a part of your poker play? And I'm curious as to when, is it before tournaments, after, during? Like what do you do and when do you do it and how does it work?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So I'm familiar with TM as a sort of concept. I've never practiced it myself, at least in a sort of very direct and studied way. But I can speak to just the idea of meditation and how it relates to poker. Um, I do have like a sort of more dedicated practice in the mornings, at least most mornings, where I spend time just sitting in a kind of traditional, you know, cross-legged pose and just emptying my mind and just, you know, following my breath and so forth. But as it relates to poker, And I would even say life more broadly. I think the goal is eventually to make the entire act a meditation where you deepen your focus and you're able to gain more insight into the subtleties that are going on, whether it's uh, very subtle movements that players are making, or um, kind of micro expressions, things they might be thinking and ways that they might be feeling, and trying to, in a sense, yeah, just gain more insight into what is happening. Uh, I was almost gonna say like see the truth, but that can be. Mm, I'm not sure if that's the right
Like
way to describe it.
tuning into the vibe at the table, right? Being connected to the other players is maybe is what you're trying to describe.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Being more connected to yourself, and as a result, being more aware of what's going on. I do think awareness is really a big part of it. Being able to pay more attention, deepen your focus, and it really all starts inside, right? Like the more awareness you have over yourself, your own mind, the thoughts you're thinking, how those are contributing to your experience, and what you can do about that, how it's impacting your emotional state. That tends to be, or at least for me, that's tended to be the doorway and gateway to understanding what's going on in others.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Okay, I've seen some comments, and in case some of you guys missed out before the scenarios, I kind of read a statement that we let purposely, we're not going to mention names, operator names, event names on purpose. And you know, we're not going to put out all the details or because it's about the questions we had about the scenarios that we were trying to just get blanketed answered by an interpretation of integrity rules, whatever. So we're not going to hash that over, folks, because we're just not, it's not worth our time. We just thought it could be a learning moment for all of us. Because there were so many varying opinions about those types of scenarios that we were just trying to get clarity. So, don't anybody be offended. Don't think that you have to defend yourself because you don't. We're all good. Everybody's happy. We're moving on. So, um, I know I mentioned earlier that you wrote a book titled The Yoga of Poker.
Hmm.
After researching you a little bit more this week, I found out that you do try to live a very Zen life, so to speak. So I need to know, were you like a hothead when you were younger, so you had to turn to the Zen life, or were you always a very spiritual person?
Yeah, it's a great question. I was never really hot-headed, but I do think that I internalized a lot of frustration throughout my youth. Like I was bullied a lot as a kid, and I don't think I learned how to deal with my emotions, but I never really expressed them. So I think uh, finding philosophies and ways of life that seek to integrate and transform different states of being was a really natural fit for me. And yeah, I would say that that was kind of the main interest that I had. I also I was introduced to it through my brother, actually, who's 3 years younger, and my kind of first experience that he introduced me to, I had like kind of a powerful breakthrough, a third eye opening type experience where I
Right.
felt a very profound like shift in my consciousness, and I was like, whoa, that was definitely different than anything else I've experienced in sort of more uh, I guess mundane uh, life moments. So yeah, it was a pretty easy thing to get engaged with since that happened to me when I first started doing it.
Right, right, absolutely. I love that. If I were to, I kind of was reading that, your book is definitely not poker instruction. What would you say your book provides to the reader?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it provides more than anything just a different perspective on again, not just poker, but like life generally. And I do think it's interesting and unique. And one of the reasons I was encouraged to write the book is because most successful poker players speak about strategy. And I've done that a lot. And that's a passion of mine. And I do love helping others and teaching and coaching and so forth. But explaining things from that perspective of the kind of implementation and execution at the table from a mindset or mindfulness standpoint, I do think it's interesting just to get that, uh, yeah, just into the hands of people who might benefit from it. So yeah, that was kind of the motivation.
Love it. I love it. And I'm going to definitely be ordering it. Merv, I haven't forgotten you, my friend. Just give me a few more minutes, Merv. I want to give I'm gonna there's so much to unpack. You're a very interesting fellow, Andrew.
Oh, thank you.
I know that you started to develop the Octopi poker community in 2022
Hmm.
alongside some crushers like Victoria Lipschitz and Nick Schulman. Can you explain to our listeners how and why Octopi poker was born?
Yeah, it was really just kind of a natural occurrence as I and we got to know Victoria and understand her prowess and success in the tech world. She was more recently, having had a lot of success with her previous business, looking for new things to pursue. And she found poker during COVID. And as that era was ending, she was beginning to travel a lot more and really looking for guidance and mentorship. And I was kind of always interested in business, and I tried my hand a few times and failed. So I was very intrigued to learn from her the things that, or the wisdom she had accrued in her trials and tribulations. So yeah, it was just kind of a natural fit. And as she was looking to learn more, now granted the landscape was a bit different 2 years ago or 2.5 years ago. Uh, she felt that poker tech was kind of in a bit of an archaic place, and I was like, all right, well, if you want to, do something about that, like I'm happy to help. And then kind of a natural barter was born where I was going to teach her poker and kind of share with her as much as I could that I've learned over the years, and she would teach me business in a more firsthand experience. She was like, well, you better be the CEO. It's the best way to learn. So as in any fool's journey and good old adventure, you just kind of dive in headfirst to the unknown. And
Baptism by fire, the only way to go.
yeah, it's so true. And I've really done that so many times in my life. I think poker is one of the best examples, but more recently, certainly, this business experience has really fit the bill there, and it's been great. It's really fun working on a team of people together, and it's definitely not without its challenges. And I've certainly had to learn a lot, not just about business, but about myself and
Right.
how I've needed to change and grow and evolve and rise to the occasion. Uh, but yeah, it's been super cool, and I'm really
Well,
grateful to have this opportunity.
tell us how you guys came up with the name Octopi.
So we actually had a different name initially. We were gonna call it White Lotus Poker, and then the White Lotus TV show came out, and then we had some internal discussions about whether or not that made sense. And this was long before we'd even announced ourselves. So we ended up just having some discussions, and I made a joke about one of our co-founders. I said he's, kind of more like an octopus. It didn't really even mean anything. But then she and a couple others thought it was interesting. And then we talked about it a bit. And I mean, the octopus is a pretty interesting creature. The poker world already has kind of this underwater thing going, right? We talk about fishes and whales and sharks. And the octopus is kind of this, distinctly different creature that has an extreme ability to adapt and change colors and manipulate its the shape of its body. And it's very mischievous and sneaky, and it's kind of all the qualities that you'd want to be able to embody to succeed at the game. So yeah, seemed interesting, and
Awesome.
that was really it.
All right. I find it interesting that y'all are data mining the Poker Go digital library
Hmm.
to harvest the live final tables to create your vault. Please let our listeners what that means for them if they were to subscribe to your site.
Yeah, so we have don't quote me on this, but I want to say it's the last 2.5 years of Poker Go footage, including this year's World Series. And we're going to continue to grow that database, and we will continue to run more simulations and develop analytics and eventually sports statistics on those hands that we want to deliver back to broadcasters so the streams can become more interesting. But as far as what a subscriber would get, is access to those hands, and you can search a player, see the hands they've played. You can search for different matchups and see how players have played against one another. We developed a fairly basic model to convert the pot sizes in chips into dollars, so you can see sort of the ICM adjusted value of the different sizes of pots. And really, we wanted to create, at least upfront, an environment where people can learn from some of the game's greatest players, because a lot of those Poker Go fields do end up pretty stacked with phenomenal talent and names in the game. Uh, so yeah, that's pretty much the vault as it currently stands.
That's awesome. Can you tell our listeners that about your 3 levels of joining your site?
Yeah. So the free tier gives you access to some of our pre-flop ranges, and it's kind of just like an introductory tier where you can sort of familiarize yourself with the site, see if you like the interfaces. I would recommend everyone join the Discord. That's where a lot of our community discussion lives. I do weekly sessions every Tuesday at 12 noon PST for an hour and a half, and just go through either review from members' play, or we'll play the trainer, or maybe review some of my own hands, kind of just mix it up week to week. Um, and then our sort of most basic paid tier for $20 a month includes a post-flop library with some solutions, and access to the trainer, where you can play against the bot, essentially the computer. We have it so you play against George, our octopus mascot. And then the highest tier gives you access to the vault and some additional solutions that you can play in the trainer. And full disclosure, we're only 4 months in. We're still a relatively new company,
Right.
and we're constantly making improvements. I've definitely learned along this process how challenging tech development is, and there's so many things that, like, we have so many cool ideas, and we kind of just have to wait until they can be built, because it's definitely a lot faster to come up with fun ideas than it is to build them out,
Right.
beta test them, make sure they're ready for users.
Right.
But yeah, that's pretty much where we're at present.
Well, good for you guys. You've come a long way in those couple of years. Now, you mentioned beta testers, and I know you guys were trying to recruit testers. Do you still need beta testers?
Um, we don't anymore, because now
Okay.
we're live in the market, and we do have paying customers. But we always are receptive to feedback. Some of it's stuff we are already aware of and actively working on resolving. But no feedback is bad, so
Right on.
any constructive criticism is appreciated.
Absolutely. Okay, for our listeners, Frank, I'll get you up here as soon as I get a vacant spot. So I'm going to go ahead and let Merv have a chance to ask his question or comment. Merv, please meet Andrew. Go ahead, Merv.
Thanks, Sherry, and thanks, Andrew, for popping along and being here to answer all these great questions. And,
Yeah.
followed along your poker journey for quite a while, and really loved and enjoyed every part of it. You just always seem to be going on to another great thing and another great thing and another great thing. So
Thank you.
I love seeing that. I've got a question that sort of drills down into focusing on each and every hand that comes up as a new individual hand, and that reset idea, and how
Hmm.
in poker you have to reset for each hand, no matter whether you took a bad beat or won a big pot. And it's sort of coming from the yoga side as well, like working out a nice practice to have during each time. Are you able to maybe run through a few key common things? There's certain things you need to know, of course, like chip stacks and position on the table, ranges of other players. But yeah, just maybe taking a breath before each hand, sitting up straight. Any particular tips or routine you might suggest for something like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think those ideas you just gave, checking your posture and checking in with your breath can be super helpful to reset. Um, I am human just like anyone else, right? So I deal with that stuff constantly. And something I've always loved about poker uh, is that no matter how much success you've had previously, it's always going to test you to really prove that you're at your best and you're, rising to the occasion in each subsequent session that you play. And I I've always felt like it's constantly poking and prodding at the weak aspects of yourself and exposing them. So for some people that's like the things you're describing that I've certainly been challenged by over the years, like resetting and staying present. I can be very self-critical and I always want to make the best decision, as I'm sure most of us do. And the more you let those past decisions, where let's say you've lost the pot or made a bad choice, like rest in your mind, all that ends up happening is it diminishes your ability to play well in the future hands dealt, and it disturbs your peace, right? Ultimately, like transcending the game, we all just want to feel better in our lives and have more peace of mind and really peace in our hearts. So I would say, just practically speaking, although like using logic in discussions about emotions doesn't always uh, kind of encompass the entirety of what's going on. That's been one way for me that's effective. I just kind of remind myself that, hey, this just really is not doing anything effective. It's only serving to, um, it's almost like an indulgence in a, like it can almost to me feel a little bit masochistic where you're kind of indulging in that negative feeling because you feel like you gain something from it, but really there's nothing to be gained from it, and it feels so much better to just kind of forgive yourself and let it go and just move on. And I've encountered that loop quite a few times where when you let it go you feel great, like you actually feel, or as I should say, I have felt like a release of energy, and I feel renewed and ready to move on to the next hand.
Great advice. Great question, Merv. Did you have another one, Merv?
No, I sort of thought maybe if we get time or a chance, I'd love to explore a couple of those previous hypothetical questions. But yeah, no, definitely there's others with their hands up. So
Okay, thank you.
thanks, Andrew. That's an awesome answer. Thanks.
Okay,
Thank you,
yeah.
Merv.
Thank you.
Appreciate you, Merv. Don't anybody get offended because I have to rotate people out. Go ahead, Barry.
Speaking of not getting offended, don't get offended by this. Andrew, thanks for your comments, and it's a pleasure to meet you. When Sherry
Likewise.
introduced you from New York, I'm like, who the fuck is this guy? And I had to do some Googling.
Spoken like a true New Yorker.
And I see she took some was an artistic fucking flair for dramatic storytelling. It's like someone from Buffalo saying they're a New Yorker. Anyway, I appreciate your comments about the cheating that we've been doing, but how do you feel about the cheating that went on at the final table of the World Series of Poker?
Good
Yeah,
question.
it's interesting. I had a number of discussions with people about it. I ultimately think it's on the operators, right? Like they had announced the previous year that such practices as using simulations in the playing environment would be prohibited, and as you see this sort of whole blow up come to pass, it's surprising they didn't step in sooner. Uh, and just kind of give a warning and let them know that's not okay. But like realistically speaking, I don't think that it made a huge difference because my understanding is that this type of thing of teams of people who are either supporting coaching or have a financial vested interest in final table participants uh, would be running simulations to gain a better understanding of the strategies and then just relaying the information to them before the final table begins or on a break or texting members of their team that are on the rail, and them just sharing verbally with them what's going on. I think optically it looked really bad, but I don't think it ended up like getting into his hands while he was playing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I mean, they like the circus atmosphere and they want eyes, so anything like that is going to draw attention and attraction. But I also agree. I don't know how much help it really had in real time, but I want to blame the floor for not stepping in. But if nobody complained in real time, then they'll just, minding their business, I guess.
Yeah, and I think that, from some of the earlier questions, and it comes up here again, it ultimately is going to be the responsibility of the operators to police the games based on the rules that they've given. And if that doesn't happen, then I don't know. I mean, like the players can lobby the organizers to be more vigilant, but it's really their choice at the end of the day, right? Like that's the nature of going and playing in a certain venue. It's the operators are deciding what goes and what doesn't.
Right. Like you said earlier, like jaywalking. I mean, some of these crimes are somewhere on the spectrum between jaywalking and murder. And even with murder, you don't get a life sentence. So it's really not that bad, all this nonsense that's going on.
Yeah, fair enough.
Well, thank you, Barry. Appreciate you. I'm going to let Paul get his comment or question in, so then I'll be able to rotate him out because he's been up here a while. Go ahead, Paul.
Oh, hey, thanks, Sherry.
You
Um,
bet.
yeah, question for Andrew. I'm a kind of business guy. I love poker, obviously, but I have a lot of branding experience, I'm looking at Octopi's website, and I'm impressed by what you guys have done. It seems very palatable and engaging. And it seems like you guys put some thought into that. So yeah, I would love to hear more about how you decided to characterize Occupy branding and branding wise and aesthetically.
Yeah, it's a good question. It's not something I have a ton of experience with. Obviously, I guess I don't really have any experience. I mean, I've brainstormed some of this stuff over the years. Like, if I were to start a company, what would it look like? But a lot of it just kind of happened naturally, organically. Discussions internally about what we thought would make the most sense. We wanted it to be more social, friendly, inviting, but also still have uh kind of a seriousness to it, where you can really come and learn in a somewhat academic way, but still have it be a bit goofy, because I think that that's the nature of poker that I've always found to be really fascinating, and what's always drawn me to it. It has that aspect where you rather, I've always continued to learn no matter how much I play, uh but I always find that if I'm not having fun, then I shouldn't be playing. And I guess we just look to encapsulate that kind of idea and deliver it through the brand.
Yeah, do you have a uh, was that kind of a big focus for someone on your team, the branding, or is it more kind of a happy accident? Because I really do feel you guys have struck on something branding wise that resonates.
Oh, well, thank you, glad to hear that. No, we don't really have anybody who is like a dedicated brand manager, so to speak. Um, as I'm the CEO and I have sort of a personal brand in poker, I feel that a lot of my likeness ends up spilling over into the way that the brand is seen, but it is still its kind of distinctly own entity, and it's different in some respects. But yeah, thank you for the kind words. I certainly appreciate hearing that.
Oh, that's
Thank you,
great.
Paul.
Thank you.
Appreciate you, Paul. Okay, gonna move on to Kush has been waiting. Go ahead, Kush.
Hello, hi, can you hear me?
Sure can.
Yes.
Hi, Andrew. Thanks for joining us today. Thanks, Sherry, for hosting. I had a couple of questions. First question: have you ever taken an IQ test? And if not, what would you set the line at is for your IQ?
That's a great question. I probably have taken one at some point. To be honest, I really don't know. I actually have no clue what like good or bad IQs are. It's not an area of expertise of mine. I'll say 120. I have no idea if that's really high or really low, though, to be honest.
Great, that's awesome. And next question is more of a fun one. If you could share one or two of your best DGen stories with us.
Sure.
Good.
So there's one I always like to share that's from my younger years. This was when I was still living in New York on Long Island. The very first place that I started playing, like quote unquote, real poker outside of home games was at a card club in Dix Hills. And I remember the first time my buddy Ben and I went to go play, they had like a camera on the door, and it felt like Rounders, and I was like, wow, Ben, like we're really doing it. Like we are the Rounders. Like it was a pretty cool moment. And it was a great group of guys and gals, and we ended up going back there quite a bit. And I remember on one occasion, I had probably maybe 3K in my bankroll. I was 19 years old, and I bluffed off like I don't even know 15, 1600 of it in just a ridiculous spot. I think I had ace nine suited, my opponent had jacks, and was just not a good bluff. I mean, I was just not a very good card player back then. And it was one of those moments where I felt so dejected when I lost that I just kind of, took myself out of the seat and tapped the table and ended up walking around the area, which was like very industrial. And I remember finding this dumpster, and I just sat on top of the dumpster, and I was like, "This is appropriate. Like, I'm sitting on trash, and I feel like trash." But in
Oh,
hindsight, it was like it was a very formative experience because I think that through those losses and errors, uh, missteps, we really learn, you know, how to better choose, or rather make better choices for the future. So even though it hurt a lot in the moment, yeah, ultimately it was for the best. And just one other thing, in high school, I used to work at a bowling alley before I played poker, and me and a couple other friends were just really into degenning on scratch off tickets. So I'm glad I stopped doing that, but yeah, I definitely it was a slippery slope early on. Uh, and then I
oh,
kind of realized like, well, if I'm going to play poker and this game is kind of all about advantage betting, uh, I probably shouldn't be doing that stuff. And yeah, fortunately, I corrected.
well, my listeners would be disappointed if I didn't say fuck Jack Jack. So go ahead, Cliff. Do you have any more questions or comments, Cliff, before I move
No,
on?
that's it. Thank you very much. And to be honest, those are. I wish my DGen stories were that light. I'd be a lot more richer. Those are light compared to the ones I'm heard. But thank you for your time.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for the
Thanks,
question.
Bush. Appreciate you, bud. I'm going to let ladies go first, Frank, and then you'll be next. Go ahead, Kieran.
Oh, I thought you were
Yeah.
going to let Barry go first when you said ladies. Okay, go ahead, Karen. Sorry.
Yeah, so I was just curious. So you were involved with Ruse, I believe, and I was wondering um, if you were able to sort of incorporate or reuse some of those ideas into Octopi.
Um, so I was never actually involved with Ruse. I beta tested their product early on when they had released it. I do think it's an incredible product, and we have spoken about some of those ideas, but sort of the core technology stack is not accessible to us at this moment. Um, but very much of interest to build something like that in the future. This is kind of where, uh, yeah, we have so many ideas, and it's, I guess, the challenge as a tech company is what makes the most sense to pursue in what sort of time frame. But yeah, incredible product, and definitely interested to create something similar in the future.
Oh, sorry about that. I thought that I remembered that you had tested it and I somehow had it in my head you were involved. I have one more quick technical question
Sure.
before Frank takes over. But I was I was curious about your archive of hands and just the technology behind that. Is it automated in any way, or at this point do you guys have to manually sift through the footage to get the hands?
Yeah, it's an AI that uses OCR to capture the data on the screen, and essentially we train an algorithm or a neural net. Probably not using this terminology correctly, but yeah, it's kind of its own intelligence that is able to take the data it sees on the screen and then transcribe it into hand history format that then allows it to display in the database as users see it.
Amazing.
Nice. That's kind of how I was picturing it to work. That sounds great once you get that built up.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. I appreciate you. Um, Let me just make one little announcement, Frank, and then I'll let you ask whatever questions you want to. If anybody else down in the goo would like to ask Andrew any questions or make any comments, please request the microphone in that bottom left corner. Hit that request button, and we'll get you up here to ask your questions or make your comments. Go ahead, Frank. It's you, bud.
What's going on? Thanks for coming by, Andrew. It's been cool listening to your story for sure. It's funny, small world. I was born into a house in Dix Hills, and I was actually born at Huntington Hospital. So,
Oh, no
and
kidding. That is funny.
yeah, my family moved into the city like a year later. But and then like also I've been sober for over 25 years. I did a lot of meditation, went to ashram. So yeah, small world.
Very cool.
My question was about have you ever gotten involved with Fedor in that Prime group, Prime Mind, or do you know anything about it? I've always been curious about his thing that he has going on over there.
Um, I know a little bit about it. I've also explored it a bit. I've never been involved. I did meet Elliot Rowe this summer at the World Series for the first time, and he was lovely. And I picked up the book that he'd written. Um, but no, I can't say that I've ever been involved with them. But I do have a lot of interest in the subconscious mind through my own explorations. This is something else that I'm excited to work on to bring into the Octopi community because right now the product is very much geared towards helping people develop strategies for their game, but me personally, I've spent a lot of time on that more meditative sort of yogic side and the training of the mind and the refining of the thought process on the sort of practical execution. So it's definitely something that I have interest in pursuing and delivering to users that can make them more well-rounded if they are so intrigued to do so.
Yeah, I find I call them the second wave. Like I definitely got interested in poker during the moneymaker thing, and a lot of those guys were amazing, and they are amazing, and they're great characters. A lot of the stories didn't end up so great, and I think that this, you guys that came along right after, the stories are really inspiring and really cool, and it's a different mindset when it came to poker. I think it's really cool. I know that group gets a lot of shit for not being as characters like the group before, but I think poker needed it.
Yeah, yeah, it's challenging. I'm very receptive to feedback generally, as I mentioned, and I know that the previous generation has, and even some people in the current generation, right? They're not a fan of the fact that a lot of people like myself and others are very stoic at the table. They don't have that same Negranu, Helmuth type banter, but if you look at somebody like Ivy, he never really had that either. He just kind of got a free pass because he's Ivy. And I think Ivy was, largely ahead of his time in many ways and probably treated poker more like a mind sport as opposed to like a gambling endeavor. And it's a tricky gap to bridge. I really do see both sides. I've thought a lot about this. Uh, but yeah, I'm open to different ideas. But really, when people are playing for a lot of money, like the idea that they would be as sort of jovial as you would see kind of a friend be in a home game where everyone's had a few beers. I don't know, just it just does not seem realistic to me.
Yeah, and I don't think there's anything wrong with people taking care of their bodies and their minds and treating it like, a business. So there's room for both for sure.
Yeah, I think so too.
Thanks. Thanks. I'm going to step down. Thanks for answering the
You,
question.
Frank. Appreciate you, bud. Appreciate your patience as well. Okay. We have a new request, and Andrew, buckle up because sometimes when we don't know people, we don't know what to expect.
That's okay.
So we are going to give Yazzie a opportunity to speak because I do believe in allowing everyone the microphone.
I
So
like it.
go ahead, Yazzie.
Hey, thanks for the opportunity.
Yes, sir.
Uh, I just have a couple of quick questions for Andrew. And
Perfect.
Andrew, um, you busted me at a couple of tournaments. In 2018, we played the LA 5K. We were deep, anyways. You busted me there, and then I think in 2019 you busted me as well on the WSOP. I don't recall. I'm a your typical weekend warrior. Sometimes uh, playing tournaments. I have like under like 200K in earnings, but when I take a vacay to just play tournaments, I really do my best. I try.
Cool.
Um, so when you're in a hand and
Hmm.
the other guy just fucking has it. You know what I
Yep,
mean? It's
I do.
just like it's just that feeling when you're like in the moment, you're playing well, you're doing well, you're like to the best of your knowledge, you're happy with what you're doing. But you get a feeling that this is actually, you know what? Against this guy, I'm gonna fold ace queen offsuit instead of three betting, and like that feeling uh, of like the outlier moves that you make in the moment.
Hmm.
How much is that a factor in like your success, in your opinion?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think the idea you're touching on is basically intuition, right? And some people refer to it as card sense, gut feeling, right? There's a lot of different words that are used to describe kind of this intangible knowingness. And I do think it's a huge part of success. And that's part of the reason I'm very interested to bring in some of those more sort of practical, like execution type elements into Octopi. Um, it's tricky though because I've always felt like uh, your ability to intuit is also directly tied to, or maybe not directly tied to, but very synergistically associated with your ability to problem solve in a theoretical setting. And another really big part of it is how aware we are of our own biases. So I'm sure you're no stranger to the type of player who, has lost with ace queen a few times, and they use that as the justification, as opposed to kind of that deeper knowing. And the trick there is that only really in the moment what those signals or impulses are, what your kind of inner voice, so to speak, is giving you. And if we psych ourselves out, then we're the sucker basically. But if we forego that inner voice when it's giving us those jewels of wisdom, we're no better for that either. And it's a very tricky dance. So I do personally feel that the kind of the highest level of poker success is where your mind is clear and you're able to understand conceptually the frameworks that drive decision making in different spots. And then once you have that kind of firmly integrated, then your heart or your intuition can guide you through those frameworks and kind of highlight in each moment what are the most relevant aspects of it. And that's the kind of, I almost want to call it mystical component of poker that it's something that you can get taught, but you kind of have to have that aha moment and really feel it yourself. It's not as easy, at least with the current tools that exist, to quantify it. There are some ways that I've been toying around with ideas to bring clarity to that and to try and measure different metrics. But yeah, it's a great question, and yeah, it's a big part of the game for sure.
I just want to have I have one follow-up question, and
Sure,
I
sure.
appreciate your answer, and I'm completely on a board. Um, so sometimes I'm watching a live stream, right?
Hmm.
And then a guy folds, like makes an amazing fold.
Hmm.
And then I'm like hearing the commentators like, "What an amazing fold! This is historical fold. How can he do that? Whatever." The comment is, but like 2 hands ago, that guy showed up in a 4-bet pot with ace 10 off. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So he's kind of like in the moment. If I was in the game, I would assume that that guy this time has that good hand. These type of calculations that are just not really relevant to the basic understanding of the game but relevant to the experience of the game that you've had with your opponent in that session, how important are these?
Yeah, they're very important. I mean, I think the way I would describe that is like table image or kind of the dynamic or game flow component. But again, and one of the reasons I think people are hesitant to attempt to teach these things is because they are, at least currently, very much in that realm of unquantifiable. Like we can say that's put up with ace 10 off in a 4-bet pot, and now they're playing another big pot. But uh, how well can we um, really like use data or scientific or simulated outputs to ascribe specific qualities to what those two hands happening in quick succession mean? Like, yeah, we can look through like final tables or what have you and see when that's happened, but every situation is so unique, and that's where I really think the intuition that you touched on initially is so important, because it allows for your subconscious mind to to give you some of those insights that your conscious mind can't really deduce as effectively. We can use the conscious mind to sometimes back engineer or figure out why we felt that way, um, but as long as we're not held back by some bias, then yeah, like oftentimes the truth is already within us.
Thank you, Andrew, for your answers. This is all I have. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity, Sherry.
Hey, appreciate you, and I'm glad you joined us. And I'm glad you weren't a troll, more importantly, Yasi. You are always welcome, sir. Thank you so much for the questions and comments. I have a DM from 8 Whiskey Sours, which is a listener from Australia, and he asks me to ask you the following. Could you tell us, wait a minute, I'm just going to read the whole thing. Could you
Mhm.
ask Andrew if he could tell us a valuable live tell or two he has picked up over the years, please?
Mm. Yeah, so one thing that I've found with live tells is that uh so first of all, different things mean different. They can be different indicators for different players. Rather, sorry, let me restate that. The same thing can be a different indicator for a different player. So the thing that immediately came to mind as the question was asked is like a quick inhale. Um, that can be strength or weakness depending on the player, and it might even mean different things for the same player based on like the mood they're in or what has happened, kind of dovetailing off the previous question, what has happened in recent times to them. And I've never really been somebody who looks for the kind of classic Oreo cookie tell in that way of being like, this thing means this. I try to just be aware, and I often don't really stare players down. I tend to observe them more from my periphery, and I find that that puts them in a state where they don't think they're being watched as much. And it also allows me to kind of stay in my inner world and and let my let my mind sort of discern what's going on, let the subconscious do its work, do what it's best at. So yeah, I've tried to historically just get a sense of how people feel, their body language and the things they're doing. Like, do they feel comfortable or uncomfortable? Um, but reliable live tells can be very tricky. Uh, yeah, I don't know that I have a particularly good answer. I think some
Well, and I
players like
think it's really about staying in the moment, right? So,
yes,
what's happening in this moment, and don't bring it from the day before unless it's the same player, right? So,
right.
what applies today to Sherry and Andrew, doesn't apply tomorrow to Donna and Isaac. So
Hmm.
I think it's really about staying in the moment. I mean, if can be so bold to say it myself, but anyway, I appreciate that question. 8 whiskey sours. I hope you're well. Donna, do you have any questions for Andrew?
No, it's 2:45 here and I'm falling asleep.
If
Sorry.
he's falling asleep over there in the UK, I appreciate you and love you. Doze off.
It's all right. I'll still be here.
Go ahead, Murph.
Apologies.
Go ahead,
Thanks,
Murph.
Donna. Thanks, Donna. Yeah, Andrew, I've got a question for some of the big inflection points in a game.
Hmm.
Can be when you win a big pot, when you lose a big pot, when the blinds are jumping up, especially live tournament play. Are there some pointers as to how to know that you've got to switch up your game? Uh, yeah, anything along those lines, because those big inflection points are, they make or break the game. You can be playing, grinding for hours and playing really patiently, and then you get this inflection point. Is there a way that you can run through it, especially sort of when the blinds jump up, I guess? But yeah, also when you win and lose a big pot. Thanks.
Yeah, definitely. I meant to kind of mention this earlier. Um, it was asked, like, are there some key factors that you think about at the beginning of each hand? And in a recent workshop I taught, I was brainstorming what's the best way uh, to conceptualize what's going on at the poker table. And I always come back to this idea of, the positions, what position you're in, and the opponents that you're playing the hand against. What are the stack sizes, or what's the stack to pot ratio? If you've gone post flop, how much is in your stack and how much is in the pot? That's often going to be a big factor in terms of understanding the thresholds of how strong your hand needs to be to put money in, like, right, the deeper the stack to pot ratio. Let's say there's, just for hypothetical sake, 10 in the pot and we have 100. uh, we have to play a little bit tighter than if there's 10 in the pot and we have 20, right? So that's one thing. And then based on the positions and the stacks, trying to deduce what types of ranges of hands the players might have, including yourself, and how that might impact ultimately your strategy and the strategy of your opponent. And I think if you kind of stay focused on those four aspects, then, whether the blinds have gone up or you're on the bubble, or really no matter what's going on in a tournament or a cash game for that matter, you can kind of always bring yourself back to the basics, the first principles, and understand how those are driving the decisions that you and your opponents are going to be making.
Great question, Murph.
Yeah, thanks. Awesome. And yes, just a sort of a follow up.
Sure.
In When the blinds jump up, I'm sort of talking about shorter pub games that might run for 4 or 5 hours, 6 hours. Uh, when the blinds do jump up, is there a sort of thing you can do with conserving a sort of average stack, or trying to stay above that average or just above average to keep you kind of leveling up through the game?
I mean, ideally, that happens sort of naturally through employing sound strategies. I think one of the benefits of kind of learning, like, sort of poker theory as it pertains to short stack play is that the shorter your stack relative to the blinds, right, there's a little bit less creativity because there's only so much you can do. So I found that it's really helpful to be willing to die essentially when you get short stacked, and that's often what allows you to live and to thrive. Um, but as far as like maintaining a stack, I think that will happen naturally as you play fearlessly with the short stack, but it's not something I would so much seek to look for as an outcome, because you might prevent yourself from uh, taking risks or chances in spots where you'd benefit by doing so. Uh, trying to kind of maintain and preserve in that sense. Does that make sense? Is that helpful?
Yeah, well, definitely was for me. Thanks so much. Hope it was for someone else. Yeah.
Cool.
Absolutely great stuff, Merv. Donna, you had your hand raised. Did I poke the bear, wake you up to some
You,
questions? Go
you
ahead.
did poke the bear. I heard my name. Andrew, what are you going to be playing next? Are you going to be playing live or are you going to be playing online? What's your next thing in poker?
So I'm gonna play the Poker Masters at the Poker Go Studio this coming week. I believe it starts on Wednesday. Starts on Tuesday, it looks like, and that goes for 9 days or so. Um, so yeah, I'm gonna focus on that upcoming, and nothing on my online agenda in the near future.
Okay, so Poker Masters is coming up, and a little happy early birthday to you. September 20th is your birthday.
Oh, thank
And
you.
do you want to tell us how you celebrated your 36th birthday in style last year, sir?
I did, yeah. I won a tournament at the Poker Masters last year on my birthday, and yeah, it was really kind of phenomenal. My wife always jokes with me that every year on my birthday I play poker, or historically I have,
Right?
and it doesn't always go well, but last year I was very fortunate to have actually taken it down. That was pretty cool.
It
I went
was
out,
very cool.
yeah.
You want to tell us about the last hand?
Yep, the last hand, I was heads up against Brian Kim, who's a great player, and I think it was maybe 18 big blinds or so effective with a big blind ante. I shoved with ace six, and he called with ace queen, and really all of the stars in the heavens above were shining on me the entire day, and it was no different here. I drilled the six, and yeah, that was that.
Awesome. Congratulations on that and all of your
Thank you.
successes for sure. Go ahead, Isaac.
I just had a real quick one before I get out of here, actually, which was what do you do to reset, like when say you were either running well or whatnot, or all your moves were working, but then everything kind of stops working, right? And you got a decent stack. You don't want to take too many risks, and you kind of like want to bring it all back home. What do you do in order to reset while you're in a tournament?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think the answer is kind of embedded within the question. When you start to feel that risk aversion, that's usually the indicator that something's gone awry, because ideally you're kind of willing to take any risk that is appropriate. But when you start to get into that mode where you're trying to conserve and maintain and kind of hold on to what you've gotten, uh, that can sometimes disrupt the natural flow of things. And I try to be extremely open-minded about how success can come. And sometimes, it might be in your best interest to lose, because you'll have a certain amount of chips that can ultimately allow you to win a pot that you otherwise wouldn't have won, and essentially create this um, string of events that if you try to be a little bit more rigid with your thought process and how things should go, uh, that might ultimately hold you back. So I think when we try to plan too much for what's to come, as opposed to just being open and willing to kind of engage each experience with an open mind, that's a good indicator that we're trying to hold on. We're trying too hard to make something happen, as opposed to just let it naturally flow.
Boy, does anybody think that besides me, speaking directly to me or to them? Oh, great
That's
question.
why I had to ask that question, because I think not just for me personally, but I think for everybody, that I like to get different perspectives on that. And I've been lucky enough to ask a few people, both some of my contemporaries and some of the people that I look up
Hmm.
to. And it's really great to get some of your insight, because I definitely love your style of play, man. And thank you very much for the answer. Sherry, thank you very much as well. I got to slide out of here and go start my space real quick.
Isaac,
But
appreciate you and your support, and good luck in the game tonight, bud.
thank you very much. Thank you very much. A pleasure again, Andrew.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the question.
Thank you, Isaac. Love you. Okay.
Love you.
Um, Go ahead, Yazzie. You have some more questions or comment?
Yeah, just one more comment, and I'm sorry I'm drilling on the same point basically, but in a
That's okay.
different way. I'm trying to like, just pick your brain, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just gonna tell you an anecdotal, experience, and I
Sure.
want you to, just comment on it. I know a guy who he's my buddy. We've been going to the WSOP every year for the past almost 10 years. Um, oh, we we exchange ideas, but it's kind of like just catching up kind of situation, you know what I mean? It's not
Mm-hmm.
like philosophical discussion. It's kind of like, oh, how did you do, whatever.
Sure.
So I knew for sure that he watched Daniel Negrano's vlog that day, right?
Okay.
And it was like a video where Daniel played against Shidwick, and Shidwick three bet him on the flop.
Mm-hmm.
And Daniel said in his videos, like, as soon as he three bet me on the flop, I knew he has nothing,
Mm-hmm.
something like that. So we just happened to be drawn to the same table. It was like the last five tables. We
Mm-hmm.
were in the money, WSOP event. And flop is three spades. I have the ace of spade, and I three bet the pre-flop with ace jack, right?
Okay.
So I c bets very small. I c bet like 20% or something, and he three bets me.
Or he would just raise you, right? At this point.
Yeah, yeah. He re-raised me on the flop,
Yep.
and I'm the pre-flop aggressor. It's heads up,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like cut off, by three bet pre-flop. So he three bets me on the flop, and I have the ace spade, three spades on the board. So knowing what I know, that he watched that Daniel Negrano vlog, and
Mm-hmm.
like thinking that he thinks that I think that he has nothing in the spot. Um, I just like reserved my last 20 big blinds, and I just uh or actually like I think I called. But like those type of information, there's just like very personal to the guy, like to the spot, because I think I know what I know, and I'm gonna like adjust from doing what the book says in this spot, and I'm just gonna like call, or you know what, at this spot, like I'm actually looking for like seven cards instead of nine cards, and I'm like gonna like adjust accordingly, like
Mm-hmm.
those kind of spots where like the personal experience with your opponent is overwhelming your thinking. Is
Mm-hmm.
that a good idea? Is that a good thing to have in your mind, or what do you think?
It it can be, and again, we're kind of getting back to this same common trend, and it's the crux of many poker decisions, where it's like, do I go with the theory or do I go with my intuition? And most of the time, it's good to go with theory because it's that way for a reason. But sometimes the theory is not enough because you have an overwhelming insight and you should go with your read. I would need to know more specifics, like what are the positions, what are the cards on the board, and what are the stack sizes. But at a glance, it seems as if this is a case where I'd probably just go with the theory because even if you know or think or like feel quite strongly that he has a good hand, if you're out of position and you're unlikely to get paid if you make your hand, sometimes the pot is just big enough that it's your best option. And yeah, yeah, it is hard to say, but like, let's say now I'm kind of just, making things up, but let's say it's a king high board and you think he's likely to have top pair. If you have an overcard and the nut flush draw, the equities are pretty comparable and you're likely not gonna see um the river if your plan is to check fold the turn. And if you hit the spade on the turn or hit the ace, then you're unlikely to get any more money out of him. So yeah, I think you're asking good questions, but it's it's really coming back to that same crux of, do we do we go with logic or do we override that with intuition? And there's really no easy answer. It's always the case that hindsight is 2020. But yeah, I mean that's what makes poker fun, right? Like there's definitely times to make those deviations, but if that becomes our normal mode of operating, then sometimes we kind of forget the simplicity of just making like solid choices that are going to succeed in the long run.
Andrew, you got it. Like I was drilling on the same point.
Hmm.
And I apologize for that. I can
That's
give you
okay.
specifics, and you're gonna give me like a very specific answer, like in terms of like stack sizes. I think I was chip leading the table, and I was cut off versus big blind who cold call a like three bet, and it was a queen high board, and I had ace jack, but like it was three spade. I believe it was like queen six three or something like that. It was like super disconnected, and I got three bet on the flop, but I decided to just fold because I was just like, you know what? I think I am either cooked or I am gonna like he has a blocker with top pair, something like that, queen 10 or with like 10 of spades or something. But one last question and I'm gonna disappear from your face here. I appreciate your time. Um, Dude, when I'm winning, I play so looser. Like I'm
Mm.
just like calling off three bets, especially like in cash games. I live in Colorado. We have like a daily 510, 1020. On the weekends is 5100. So like I take part in those games and sometimes it's like I do well, sometimes I do not, you know.
Hmm.
But like when I'm winning, especially like over a buy-in, I'm taking chances, bro.
Hmm.
And it's not helping my bottom line, but like what how do I counter that?
Well, I think it's really a matter of discipline, right? Like you're feeling emboldened by your recent success to take more chances, as if the um as if the money is not quite the same as the money you bought in with. But in reality, it's not all that different. And this is often referred to as winner's tilt. And I think it's not terribly uncommon that players face this challenge. Uh, but yeah, I think the way to overcome that is just to be more resolute and use your willpower. And the next time you find yourself making those choices that you're now reflecting on and feeling as if they're not in your best interest, and you're wishing you wouldn't do that, just kind of remind yourself like, hey, bro, like, is this really what I want to be doing? Is this how I want to be playing? And oftentimes, just bringing awareness to a situation is enough to then be able to change your behavior, but awareness is definitely the first step. So, yeah, you can also sometimes justify playing more hands or playing more aggressively if you have that momentum where players are kind of getting out of your way and perceivably playing more straightforward against you. There can actually be sort of tangible, more quantifiable reasons to do that. But if you're just kind of needlessly gambling because of recent success, then yeah, probably it's not doing you any favors.
Well, thank you for those questions and comments, Yazzie. I appreciate it. I have a random question for you, Andrew.
Sure.
What is the most buy-ins to a tournament you ever forked over?
Hmm. Um. Wow. Online, it's got to be insane, like 10 or something. But in some of those tournaments, you can buy them with 10 big blinds, and
Right.
it's easy to keep clicking in $300 at a time. Uh, Live. It's a good question. Probably like four or five in one of those like big field WPT reentry type main
Right.
events.
Right. I'm
Yeah.
always curious to hear, there is such a wide range of answers to that question. It's amazing. So I always try to ask folks that question because I'm just curious. I like to play something called Rapid Fire. Are you game?
Yeah. Let's do it.
All right. Limit or no limit?
No limit.
Jets or Giants?
I'm really not a sports fan. Uh, wow, I really have no clue. This is,
You could say pass.
yeah, I'll pass. I just do not know.
No worries. No worries. Dishes or cook?
Dishes or cook? What do you mean by that?
Do you want to do the dishes or do you want to do the cooking?
Oh, I'd rather do the dishes.
All right. Text or phone call?
I mean, text is more convenient, but phone calls more. Yeah, phone. Phone's better.
Beach or mountains?
Wow. I would have definitely answered mountains as of basically every time in my life previous to a few weeks in the recent past, but I've had some really nice experiences on the beach. Gosh, do I have to choose?
No,
Are there
how
any
about
mountains
say
near the beach?
right on? How about both? How about
Yeah.
both? I'm good
Yeah.
with both.
Both.
Um, Sour Patch Kids or Swedish Fish?
I'll do Sour Patch Kids.
The Godfather or Star Wars?
Hmm. Uh, let's go Star Wars.
All right. Thank you for playing.
Yeah.
I love that. Okay. Last chance, Kieran Chess. So we're going to go around the horn and we're going to let you off the hook, Andrew, so you can enjoy the rest of your evening. Kieran Chess, any more questions or comments for Andrew?
No, just thanks very much for coming. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been really fun getting some questions that are different than most of the questions I often get asked. And it's lovely to meet all of you.
Well, it's been great meeting you, Donna. If you're still awake, any last questions or comments?
Yeah, I'm still awake. You poked the bear. Andrew, it's been lovely having you on here, and the very best of luck in the Poker Go studios at the Masters.
Oh, thank you so much.
Andrew, thank you so much for entertaining us, our questions and our comments. And I'm glad you had the opportunity to experience a space. We do this once a week. I do scheduled once a week. I do an interview. Anytime we're popping, feel free to join us. It has been a pleasure to get to know you a little bit better. And if I can ask you of one favor,
Hmm.
could you kind of poke Shannon Shore to come on with us? He's been real busy, but hopefully he'll come on with us. Maybe if you give him a little poke for me, I would appreciate it.
I would be glad to do so. I think he'd be a great guest. I know he has two young children and a beautiful wife, so he's certainly got his hands full. But
He's super busy and I get it, but I just thought maybe if he heard about your experience, he may make it a little bit more of a priority. Even in the next 6 months, we're good.
yeah, yeah, that sounds good. And by the way, I just wanted to apologize once again. I thought the show was starting at 7:30 Pacific time, and I was in the car on the way back from LA to Vegas. So uh yeah, I understand you're still gracious and I appreciate that, but I really try to be on time with commitments that I make. So
Well,
uh
and I'm going to tell you, I appreciate your kind words. And, it happens. And we just kind of roll with whatever here in the space
and I
because,
love that.
people are also on the felt sometimes when they're trying to call into interviews. So we just roll with it. And, if we have to reschedule, we'll reschedule and be on our merry way. But I do appreciate your kind words. And I see Merv came back up here. He may have another question for you. So go ahead, Merv.
Thanks, Sherry. I just wanted to say thanks, Andrew, heaps, and good luck in the birthday at PokerGo. That should be good. And also, if you've had a great time today, you could possibly think about having a space with Octopi as the main sort of format, once a week, once a fortnight, once a month, just whatever. And I'm sure you'll get plenty of support here from plenty of people that have just heard you and would love to just have a little bit more piece of the pie, you might say, the octopi. So
Awesome.
good luck with that.
Yeah, thank you.
Eight
That's a great
hands,
idea.
yeah, yeah.
Thank you again, Andrew. We're so happy you joined us this evening, and hopefully you'll come back again in the future and we'll get to chat a little bit more with you, my friend.
Sounds good to me.
All right. Good night, everybody. Thank you for listening. I appreciate all of you, especially the folks in Gitmo. I appreciate you as well. And those that will listen to the recording, I appreciate you too. Have a great weekend, everybody. Bye.
Bye bye.